Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network, where we reflect on Wildbow's most Homerian work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse,
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
and we are coming at you live. Pew pew! 1 hour earlier than normal. And if you were interested in that, I guess you should join the Discord. If you're interested in knowing when things are 1 hour earlier than normal, which I don't know, maybe there are some total perverts out there who are, then join the Discord.
Sorry, what's perverted about that?
Knowing when things are happening earlier than they normally do.
Sick,
I
sick
mean,
freaks.
not to kink shame, but come on. No,
Um,
anyway, let's talk
let's
about
start the chapters.
chapters.
Bail, bail.
um, it's 20.5. Edith has arrived in town for Christmas. Hooray! So Lucy and Verona are walking her over to Matthew's to pick up her stuff, I guess, and kind of gently grilling her for juicy info at the same time.
Yeah, the ghost of Kennet past is here. I do think this is fun because it's like as hype as I was for the Christmas party and just really wanted to get into that right away. There's something almost more Christmassy about Verona and Lucy giving Edith the chance. Like that's the most generous shit ever. So it's kind of fun that like we're really getting into Christmas from the perspective of is Edith salvageable?
Well, part of Christmas is seeing the relatives that you don't really like that much, right? So fair enough. It's on theme. Um, yeah, no, it's interesting. It's interesting. I did find it funny how Lucy and Verona are so cold to her. I mean, like, obviously justifiably, but they're so much worse to her than they are to, like, Liz, Charles, or Mariska. And they're not nice to those three, but it feels like in this first part of the chapter, every single thing that Edith says, Lucy's back with, like, well, it's your own fault, blah, blah, blah. It's very fun. Like,
I,
Lucy chimes in at one point with, Edith says that she feels like half a person, and like talking clearly talking about what they had been talking about, which is like
yeah.
how much of them they can present to people and all that stuff. Lucy chimes in with, "Don't say that's because your better half is gone," which is just such a like a fucking clap back for no reason.
Yeah, I sort of agree, but I'm gonna push back on the part where you said that they're shittier to her than they are to like Charles and Liz and stuff, because I don't
Mm.
know if you're remembering those conversations right. I thought that they were equally like every time Charles tries to say something, Lucy's just like, "Well, you killed John, fuck you." Like,
Yeah, maybe that's right. Maybe that's. Maybe it was. I think it was more like that, but they've kind of had to somewhat come to terms with the situation they're in, and it's slightly dulled that edge. I think.
yeah, yeah, my read was actually kind of that if anything they were kind of like I would have described the vibe of this conversation is like Lucy and Verona were actively trying to be nice and holding back from being shit. Like if Lucy wanted to go all out, they could have scared Edith off pretty quickly. In fact, Edith tries to leave a couple of times and they have to keep talking her into staying. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty early in that Lucy realizes that Verona has kind of gotten Edith to come here. Like Verona is being so noticeably not aggressive towards Edith that even Lucy is pretty instantly like, "Oh, is Verona the reason she's here?" And there are other moments like I think they let Edith have the bit where they're like, we miss the good times with you. Like it was really fun learning runes with you at the start of the story. Like
Yeah.
why did you fuck that up? You dumb shit. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I felt like what it was, boy, is like they're trying their darndest not to fight with her. She just makes it really hard.
She does. She does.
Like
Uh,
she's still completely refusing to take responsibility. There's the part where she was like, "Oh well, Matt was kind of a half a person, so the poisoning helped a bit." And it's just like, "Oh, no, unacceptable."
mm, yeah, pretty rough.
But yeah, I guess like to launch on that, what I thought also was interesting was that Avery has only met Edith once since Arc 13, and that has stood out to me because Edith was the one who was pretty. So Avery was the one who was pretty chill with Edith. Like I don't know if you remember, it was when some Massa stuff was going on or something, and Lucy and Verona were joking about sending Edith out to die, and Avery was like kind of being like sort of nice to Edith.
Mm.
And I just think that's funny because, like, Edith, we've obviously talked about how she was sort of the Avery gone wrong culprit. And so it's kind of fun that Avery's not here for this. And this is like, we're seeing how Edith bounces off Lucy and Verona, which is fun because the last time we saw her was when Edith was bouncing off like Charles and Marisica, who are the evil Verona and Lucy. And I think that comparison really sort of frames how I'm thinking of this conversation because these guys are so much nicer to Edith than Marisica and Charles are. Like Marisica and Charles kind of fucked Edith right over, and now Charles wants to like chop her up, and we'll get to that. But like Verona and Lucy are actually the only ones who are like, hey, maybe we can like salvage you.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Verona is clearly up to something here,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that something seems to be trying to figure out a way to salvage Edith, or that maybe is like the that's like the way to pitch it to get to what Verona really wants, which I don't think we understand. But yeah, this whole thing about Edith being corrected, getting personality correcting surgery, whether it's from Charles or from the Kennedys Alcazaring and diagnosing her or whatever, it's pretty strange, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like medical or therapeutic analogs you can make to a degree. Less so to what I think Charles is planning to do to her, but yeah, it's like a really existentially horrifying topic. The idea of like altering yourself to change things about it, but like that's kind of what so much of medicine is, really. I
Mm.
think it just you just appreciate the existential horror more when it's painted through a
Yeah,
magical
yeah,
lens.
that's fair enough. I think the fact that it's similar to what we've talked about with like Rook, the fact that it's intentionally personality altering is a bit
Yeah.
messed, right?
Yeah, but I
But
mean,
you know, in the same
yeah,
way that it's kind of existentially horrifying for like brain damage or to change your personality or like
yeah,
getting a lobotomy or whatever, right?
yeah, or even like antidepressants are a bad example, but any kind of
Well,
drug
true.
that's
Yes.
intentionally fucking with your brain chemistry.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and in fact, that was sort of the vibe I got from all this, like, because Lucy and Verona talk about how there's not going to
Mm.
be like the easy fix, like it's not like they're going to be able to Alcazar into Edith, and it's like, oh look, here's the chunk that is a piece of shit. Let's just take
Yeah,
it
here's
out.
the someone's put a piece of shit in here. That explains it.
Because I think especially with like a person or a self, it's not just going to be like a space that's just like an array of individual rocks, right? It's like a complex ecosystem. So same way like you build up immunity to antidepressants or other drugs. It's like I don't think you could just like go into Edith and like drop some nice vibes or whatever and expect that to fundamentally change her. Like she's an ecosystem that might grind that change away and try to reform stability. Anyway,
Mm.
we'll see what Charles is cooking. I suppose the other angle here to sort of talk about is aside from looking at how Verona and Lucy compare to Charles and Mariska and how they treat Edith. It's also really fun. Like Edith has obviously been a Brett stand-in at multiple times in this story. And so I was really interested sort of seeing Verona interact with Edith because it's like this super interesting insight into how I feel like it's an interesting insight into how Verona thinks Brett should get help, right? Like it's this sort of
Mm.
that whole, the Kenneteers being the people that they needed sort of vibe. Like, how much better would Verona's life have been if 2 years ago somebody had come in and got Brett help, right? Like Verona's being the person who kind of gets Edith the help that she needs. And I don't know. I think it's really interesting to sort of look, yeah, from Verona's perspective, it's like, yeah, this is a person who reminds everyone of Brett, and but it's not Brett. So Verona's able to distance herself just enough where she can actively sort of try to help her. And I think well, yeah, it's saying good things about Verona. This is the Verona who's recently realized that she's not a piece of shit. And it's like she actually, I think, just does want to help Edith. She wants to help people like this. Brett is too close to her, and she's not going to help Brett
Mm.
herself. But like the people like Brett who are out here, she wants to understand them and try to make them better.
Yeah, I would like to see Verona Alcazar Brett. I think that would be a hilarious story arc. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Um, yeah,
Like
I guess it's
I think Edith is like an acceptable proxy for Verona coming to terms with Brett as a person, like because Brett is just it's too loaded. There's too much going on. It's her dad. She shouldn't have to do that. But it's like if she can use Edith to kind of make a statement on the idea and then tell Brett to go do that with someone else, like that feels right to me.
yeah, yeah, fair enough. Um, Can we talk about the fact that Verona and Charles both seem to be doing the same thing, but like, you know what I mean? Like, Verona has seemingly brought Edith here to discuss this like personality correcting surgery, and then they find out Charles has pitched the exact same thing. I
Well,
don't know. Like, what's there's something going on here, right?
I don't know that Charles has pitched. I mean, Edith's quite clear. She
Sure.
didn't really put any limitations on what he could do. He was basically like, "Hey, can I chop you up?" And she was like, "Fucking yeah, sure."
Mm,
Like the thing that keeps sticking in my mind was that line from Marisica, and I think it was 18 dot Y or Z, where she was like, "Oh, we're all still caterpillars." And so I don't know if Charles is planning to pull Edith out the other end of this operation as still just like herself, but rather like some. I think Charles is planning some pretty massive change, a la Marisica going from Fae to Goddess.
mm,
So it's kind of and I think that's sort of the comparison that even Edith picks up on, which is like Charles is like, "Hey, can we like chop you up and use you for parts, and it'll totally help you, I promise," or whatever. Whereas Verona and Lucy, even Edith can see that they've come here and they're like, "Hey, we literally just kind of want what's best for you. Like, we're mad at you, but if you're willing to move forward and try to become better and take responsibility, we're willing to help you do that." And that's why I think she agrees to let them be like outside counsel for this operation that Charles is doing, is because like even she can see that like Charles is probably trying to get something out of her and turn her into a weapon, and the Kennedys actually want her as a person to be okay.
mm. Yeah, but do you think it was? Do you think? I mean, obviously, I think Charles would have done some stuff to make Edith into something that he could use. But surely that wasn't the pitch from Charles originally. Surely the pitch from Charles was like, "Let me do some corrective surgery on you, not just let me disassemble you."
I mean, Edith is pretty vague about what his offer is, but the
Yeah,
one thing she's clear on is
yeah,
that she didn't really put any stipulations on it. Like, she was just like, yeah, like, she's kind of got that vibe of like she's given up to a degree. Like, her entire
yeah.
life has been built around getting Matthew, and now that she's lost him, the borderline suicidal tendency of just like, yeah, do whatever, like, just make me feel not this is
Mm,
almost the vibe.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is the one funny bit where when Verona first pitches that she wants to do the surgery on Edith, Edith's like, "Do you like have any ulterior motives?" And Verona's all like, "Oh, do you need to ask that, blah, blah?" And I was like, God, it's not often that Edith is 100% correct and right, but like you got to give Edith that one where like Verona's like, "Oh, please don't ask about my ulterior motives for wanting to take apart yourself." And it's like, no, you know what? Even Edith deserves the right to say, "Please tell me what you're planning to do to me."
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
funny that she didn't do that to Charles.
Um, yeah, true. Um, hey, so then, of course, Edith uh, drops her philosophy here that Charles actually sees the inherent good in people, whereas the Kennedys don't, which is insane. And Edith tries to explain it, but I still don't quite get exactly what she's going at. Like, I don't agree with this, I guess. And I kind of, it to me reminds me of this thing of like people who I think are struggling to come to terms with mistakes that they made, like see the world as like, oh, I did this, but that's not who I am. Like deep down, I'm this. You know what I mean? Like if you take away all the shitty things that I've done and all the shitty parts of society that have shaped me into that, deep down, I'm a really good person. And it's kind of nonsense, right? To me,
Yeah.
that's
I
my read on it, at least.
I think my understanding of what Edith is saying about Charles is that it makes the most sense to me if you apply it to Charles himself.
Mm,
Which is like Charles is a person who just has very consistently fallen in with the wrong people and made huge fucking mistakes. But at the end of the day, he isn't he kind of is a good person, or at least he used to be.
mm,
Like I'm thinking of he was in with the bad crime people. The Revenant got them all, and he went to jail and then tried to be better after the Blue Heron stuff. Like he took that step back, and he was like the spirit. He tried to be a spirit doctor for people like Edith. Like he tried to be better, and then Alexander dragged him back in and kicked him out, made him forsworn. And it's like, so I think, and like even now, Charles is like as you sort of said, doing all this bad stuff, but coming from that place of like, no, you don't understand. I have to commit these crimes so that there's peace for everyone else, sort of thing. And so, like, I think Charles views himself as somebody who keeps doing bad things, but because he's getting dragged in by bad people, and he's a good person,
Hmm.
he just makes mistakes because of society, and like,
Okay, so I mean, this is bullshit, right? Like,
what
clearly, this is
no,
bullshit.
but you could see why Charles thinks this about himself and why he's held on to that and why he's sort of extended this as a bit of a well thought. Like it totally tracks for someone like Charles to have come out of all of
Yes.
these situations with, I am good. It's the rest of the world that made me make these mistakes. So we need to tear it down and build a good world now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I, yes, I agree with you. I think this is Edith buying into Charles's hype about himself, basically. Like, Charles often in conversations will say things like, "Oh, I know I'm doing bad things," blah blah blah. But I think deep down, Charles actually thinks he's a super cool martyr who's doing awesome shit, right? Like, I think
Oh
he
yeah.
says those kinds of things to because he thinks he has to say that to not seem like a psychopath. But deep down, he thinks, "Oh no, I'm super cool and I've done nothing wrong ever," you know.
No,
Um,
no, I think he's like a ends justify the means sort of dealing it. Like I think
mm,
Charles thinks a lot of what he's doing is harsh and, there are
mm, mm,
unnecessary victims, but it's sort of like if he has to kill 1,000 innocent people to end forswearing in this region, that's a net positive for him.
mm. Yeah.
So
Uh,
he's gonna do it. So it's like, yeah, like I think he like and, this is the trap he's fallen into his whole fucking life is he'll do something horrible, but it's like, no, you don't understand. I'm doing it for the right reasons, and I have a good goal in mind. And you're like, yeah, this is. I mean, like it's the same. We've kind of ragged on the Negateers and how he's just invented like essentially an equivalent or potentially even shittier version of traditional practitioner culture, but he's maybe fixed one or two problems with it, or at least he was trying to, and so, like, in his mind, it's like,
mm,
he was doing something good, or he was trying to. Um,
yeah.
I just do think it's funny, though, because like, I think I agree with Edith's assumption or so assertion that Charles thinks the problem is society, and he wants to tear it down and build up a new, gooder society that means people won't be bad. But he's just doing such a shit job of that right now. Like he has to see that he's creating very similar circumstances to what created the current shitty society. Like he's so smart sometimes, and then other times he's very dumb.
Mm, yeah. Um, he is.
Um,
He is. He is a real
yeah,
dingus, isn't he?
and I guess sorry to talk about like because Edith's other half of the assertion, which is very funny when you first hear it, is that the Kennedys don't believe in the inherent goodness of people.
Yeah.
Um,
It doesn't make any sense.
But I think it does, because like,
I,
because, like, if you come at it from this angle, like, I feel like the angle Edith's coming at it from is so much of what Miss of the Kenneteers like to do is set up checks and balances so people can't abuse power. Like, it's essentially you want a
mm,
kind of no trust system where you could sort of say, okay, hopefully, regardless of who's actually in power, they can't abuse things too much.
mm.
Which is kind of taking the position that people will abuse power if we let them, so we shouldn't let them. And
No,
that's just demonstrably true, though. That's the thing. Like, if it is saying people are bad, then I guess I agree with that statement
but
because it's
I don't think it is
demonstrably.
saying that people are inherently bad because it's just saying like it's saying people can do bad things. Doesn't mean they're inherently bad. It means it's similar to what Charles thinks or supposedly thinks that society can make people do bad. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's not people are inherently bad. It's we need to make sure that if there are people who have been made bad or whatever, that they can't do worse stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah. No, yeah, exactly. But I guess it is coming at it from this perspective of like the Kenneteers system, like a system that is all about checks and balances and preventing abuse of power, is kind of defining itself as saying we expect people to abuse power if they can. Whereas
Mm,
Charles is in his mind creating this hierarchical society where everyone struggles, but the idea is seemingly being that then the people who make it to the top will be good and benevolent. Um, like he is creating dictatorships and stuff and trying to seemingly build a society where the naturally benevolent will become the dictators, and I can't for the fucking life of me see how he thinks that last part is happening at the moment.
Yeah, it just doesn't
But
track. And
but
I never
yeah.
thought I would say this about Charles, but I think he's just being a bit short-sighted here.
I can't believe that it's like he's sitting at the top here with like Marisica and he's thinking, yeah, we're creating something that'll make the good people rise up.
Mm,
Because like
yep.
nobody, even Edith is like, yeah, Marisica's whole life philosophy is she just likes to torture people because it makes them interesting. And it's like, Charles, you have to understand that's not the sort of person we want on top, though, right? Like, anyway.
Mm,
I'm not actually 100% sure I agree with Edith on that one. The that Mariska's motivation is mostly she just wants to make people interesting and have fun. Because I like taking myself back to Mariska's interlude. I felt like her main motivation was she was really pissed at the fairy courts because of what they did
yes.
to her brother.
Mm,
And like if you take the idea like that I certainly prescribe to that like the fairy and the fairy courts are sort of the metaphor for society as a whole.
mm,
I can kind of see the line for Mariska going from anti-fairy courts to just sort of anti-organized structures in general to just being like a
yes.
full-on anarchist.
Yes.
So I don't know if she's necessarily toying with people because she thinks that's fun, or whether she's just kind of incentivized to make sure she just likes disrupting structures because she doesn't believe in like big societal structures.
Yeah. I think so too. But yeah, like I I still feel Marcy is in this interesting spot where I don't know if we know whether she feels like she's accomplished what she wants to or not. You know what I mean?
She still
Like,
talks about herself as if she hasn't, and she's still Marisica. So yeah, I
yeah,
agree. I don't think we've seen Marisica's end game yet. And you know what, I'm gonna be
no,
honest, I don't think Charles is aware of it either. Like
yeah,
it turning out that Marisica has a phase two that fucks over Charles and Liz and stuff would not be the most surprising turn of events, right?
it wouldn't be at all, would
Like,
it?
oh, Marisica was being a selfish piece of shit who betrayed all of her allies. Oh my gosh.
Well, I think we're going to see probably a bit of Marisica versus the Winter Court, and that will, I think,
Mm,
shine a
yeah.
light on how Marisica feels about the court system now and whether she has any moves to play there, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Um, so yeah, they get to Matthew's house and Edith takes her like box of things, and it's pretty clear that this was not enough of a reason for her to come. So some other stuff is definitely going on. Anyway, Matthew and Louise are having a chill Christmas Eve, and Edith decides to agree to let the Kennedys represent her in the operating room.
Yeah, and this is gonna be so fun. The Kennetys being, like, her consultants to make sure that Charles is actually treating her as a person, is gonna be fun, especially because my math on this might be out because I'm generally terrible at following the dates in these stories. I think the operation is happening right before the truce ends, like, either the day of or the day before the truce ending. So it feels like Charles doing whatever he does to Edith it could be a great lead in
Is going to
to
end the truce, yeah.
yeah, it could be yeah, or and also just like sort of I guess the statements like this is when we expect Charles and Co to reveal their hands and come out swinging, and it's like a fun sort of I guess if we're going to get insight into the next phase of their plan, that taking the form of us seeing what they do to Edith is really fun.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, great relationships all round. So that's fun.
Yeah, the story has just fully jumped on board with shipping Matthew and Louise, and I'm right there beside it.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, Lucy heads back home. Booker and Alyssa are there, and Lucy turns on the charm to get them to come to the fireworks show.
This is so funny.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so it's fun. It feels pretty manipulative, but it's not like doesn't seem like Lucy's using magic to manipulate the situation. Just kind of
Yeah.
magic inspired shenanigans. So, it's still firmly in the fun camp to me.
Yeah, I mean, to get all I'm 14 and this is deep, like all interactions are manipulative to some degree, right? Like,
All right, Elliot. Go back to Reddit.
but no, I do the lead into this in the text is very fun because it's like she thinks about like, well, this is how a fairy might do it, and she's still kind of figuring out how a dog tag might do it, and she's like, how would a goblin convince these two? And it's just to like fucking layered on ridiculously thick, and she picks just the best goblin to follow the lead of to do that.
Mm.
Especially I love because Jasmine and Lucy are the two people we've seen Biscuit really try this move on, and it failed both times. So it's just hilarious to me that Lucy and her family have been immune to Biscuit trying this, and then they just stole it from her.
Great
Yeah.
moment. Great stuff.
I'm continuing to be fascinated by this trio of forces. Lucy's going for herself with the goblins, the fairy, and the dog tags. Like the dog tags are
Mm.
such a fun third side to tack onto this classic duology that we've had for, a long time in the other verse.
Mm.
Like Lucy thinks to herself that she's not quite sure yet how the dog tag version of convincing Booker looks like. And it's like I feel like the big thing for the dog tags has been their relentlessness. So it's kind of like I feel like it's just classic Lucy where she would have just kept making points about why he should come. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. This is like a fascinating thing that I'm so keen to see the story keep exploring.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think we will. I think we've been seeing more and more of this from Lucy. So it kind of indicates to me that I think there's going to be more of this going forward.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, the next day, Avery arrives proper with Nora in tow, and they're a very cute couple. Nora is starting to become a bit curious about magic, though.
Yeah, I love how Lucy points out to us that when they're left alone with Nora, the first thing Nora does is ask Verona and Lucy, like, is it true that they were there for Avery? Like, her first protocol is, so you guys are legit, you take care of Avery. Like, it's a very good sign that that's sort of the first thing she's worried about. But then she immediately transitions to, hey, so why is she so fucking mysterious? Like, what
Yeah,
is up with this? And
yeah.
that's the bit where you're like, oh, this is going to be something that needs to be addressed.
Mm. Yeah. Um, and I guess we'll get a bit more about that in a little bit, but yeah, they're a very cute pair.
Yeah. Like, this is such there's something intrinsically fun about getting characters that you know and love who haven't met and seeing them interact for the first time. Like, it's just something that you see everywhere in fiction is people love the characters and they form attachments to characters and then they want to see different groups of those characters interact because it's just like seeing your friends meet or something. It's sort of what it feels like. This is why we still regularly see threads on the subreddit that talk about how pale characters would interact with packed characters, right? Like
Mm.
it's just a really fun thing for stories to do, and this is the sort of thing that Pale has set itself up to do now. We've kept Nora sequestered for the six arcs she's been in the story, and now we can bring her in and just have a lot of fun with like seeing how she bounces off everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Nora is delightful. Her energy in the trio is very good. Like, she just kind of fits right in pretty naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, she's very similar to Avery in some ways. Yeah. I kept getting a laugh though in both of these chapters. How Avery keeps getting really annoyed because Verona is like going out of her way to shit stir Avery and Nora,
Mm.
and the whole time the interactions had this energy of just like, Avery, the fuck did you think was going to happen? Like, this was, I could have called this a year away. Oh, Verona's going to go out of her way to make both of you feel uncomfortable and awkward. Of course she's going to do that. Like, you should have been prepared for this.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, of course. And this harkens all the way back to the Blue Heron
It
Institute.
does exactly. Like,
But yes.
Avery and Verona have a time-honored tradition of being shitty to each other about this stuff, and I just don't know why Avery thought it was going to be any different.
Yeah, and I guess we'll jump around a bit on this one because, like, this comes up in this chapter and next chapter. But
Mm.
do you think everyone in Avery's life is going to know about magic soon? I mean, we get the Sheridan stuff in the next chapter, which we'll get to. We get Nora's theory about Avery being secretly rich. I don't know, like, I, I kind of feel like it's going that way, right?
Yeah, she's going the full Flash from CW, isn't she? Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's interesting. I had this like theory as I was reading actually that they were going to use the nightmare market as a way to like test the waters for a verification of your friends because it's like the big problem with making your friends aware, right, is that you can't really get informed consent on whether somebody's ready for that to happen because you got to tell them the thing to get the informed consent. Like, it doesn't work, and then it's also permanent. You can't like undo it. So I thought the nightmare markets are a really fun way to kind of explore shit, like testing it and in a non-permanent way.
Mm.
But then it seems like actually they're not doing that because yeah, Rowan and Sheridan like are just apparently going to be made aware. Well, yeah, we'll talk about that. But it does feel like Avery gets a bit of an out with Nora here, but it doesn't feel like an issue that's just going to like happily sit on the sidelines until they potentially talk about marriage years from now. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I feel like we're gonna have to get some more of this, like some
Yeah.
kind of resolution to this in the story. I just don't think it's gonna be able to sit on the sidelines.
Well, especially because like breaking this barrier around innocence has been a big thing for the Kenneteers and Kennet as a whole since the founding. Like
Mm,
both them and Charles are kind of happily chipping away at that specific barrier. Um,
mm.
so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I go back and forth on Nora, awareifying Nora specifically. I guess we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, in disappointing news, we do learn that Lucy is a gamer now
Mm-hmm.
because there's
Mm-hmm.
some band and she's played the game based on the band's album, which I don't know if that's a thing that happens in real life. That's like a weird.
No, it's a kind of immersive experience kind of thing. Although I guess if it's a full game, that's a bit more extreme than I'd be used to. But there was that what was it called? The Swords and Sorcery. Ooh, EP, is that right? That was a game album thing, wasn't it? Am I wrong?
I have no idea what you're talking about. You're gonna have to turn to the chat on this one. Um,
Uh,
anyway, but yeah, so this is obviously this is Lucy's big obstacle to overcome. Is now that she's become a gamer, she's obviously lost a lot of her moral high ground.
mm.
But yeah, no,
No, no,
I do.
okay. I was referring to Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery EP, which is a kind of album
But
slash
that's
game
going the other
thing.
way. That's not an album that got turned into a game. That sounds more like an
No,
album from games.
no, no. It's I don't know. It's kind of a album slash game.
Oh,
Anyway,
interesting. Anyway, yeah. Point is, poor Lucy. She's a gamer now. That's very unfortunate for her.
mm. Yeah. Anyway, so the Negatiers are here, including Nomi, who's shown up, and they have a bit of a discussion about forswearing. Um,
I was so excited that Nomi had come because the last chapter we heard that she wasn't coming, and it was like, oh yeah, Nomi did decide to come, but then she started speaking, and my excitement dimmed somewhat.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so I think something that was interesting here is it really reaffirmed like the Negatives are not just here because they're like magic. They've been properly brainwashed by Charles. They do have a moral crusade that they're fighting, which
Yeah,
obviously kind of makes sense. And it's one that is like obviously justifiable, right? They've heard about forswearing from Charles and they've seen, well, some of their teachers, you would think they'd think,
yeah,
okay, be fair. But some of them, Yiyun, for example, you can hear the horror stories of forswearing and think that's fucked and make them want to
yeah.
stand with Charles.
Yeah,
I kind of, mm,
Nomi's thing in this chapter feels like a direct response to the conversation we saw her have with Yiyun in her own interlude, for sure.
yeah. Um, yeah, so I kind of wanted Lucy to be like, yes, forswearing is fucked, but Charles is killing people. And she kind of, I get the vibe that she feels like if she's um, takes too much of a moral stance, it will be completely
Yeah,
unhelpful. She kind of wants to just have time to be a human around them, which I think is fine. But um, yeah, I don't know. I kind of wanted her to just be like, she says something like, Charles is on this crusade and we lost people, whereas I would have liked her to say Charles is on this crusade and he killed people. You know what
yeah, yeah.
But I guess she's being a bit diplomatic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's definitely, and I mean, this is a kind of vibe for the whole chapter, but this is Lucy holding back, like very intentionally. And it just, yeah, like you're right. This wasn't really the time or place to have this debate. Um, but it hurts you. Like my favorite part was when she's sort of like, yeah, forswearing is bad, but like changing it is going to be really hard. And then I think it's Carolyn is like, so what? We just shouldn't even try at all. And I was like, oh, if like, are you really playing the "oh, if it's gonna be hard, we just shouldn't fight at all" card on Lucy of all people? Like, yeah, like just that is the wildest person to play that card with. Like we've seen Eloise try it and fail. Like it just was so funny to me that these guys are just so not understanding of where the Kenneteers are or what they're thinking that like that's their sort of argument here. Like they clearly just have no idea. Um, Nomi's fucking drinking the Kool-Aid so fierce I'm worried she's gonna get type 2 diabetes, like with the way she's spouting Charles rhetoric here. It's crazy.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
you
But
can
I mean like
understand what they're coming from and stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, wait, this is was really one of the big points of this chapter for me. Was this is really a chapter that's exploring Lucy's ability to, like I guess like not just choose her fights, or choose how she fights each fight. Like we saw a lot in her interactions with Edith. Like I think the reason it was Lucy's perspective we were seeing this Edith chat from and not Verona's is Lucy spent a huge chunk of that conversation with Edith figuring out how much she was meant to be aggressive and how much she needed to pull back. Then obviously there was the manipulation of Booker. Like I think this was really exploring, like as Lucy's moving less away from physical fighting and more into the karma and stuff. This was really exploring more of her like social game and her ability to actually hold back and not fight some of those verbal battles like she used to.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I guess continuing that theme, Nora takes the stage and Lucy finally breathes.
yeah. Yeah, because there's really this vibe. She's like set up this whole concert or party, and it seems like it's all going great. And Lucy's standing at the back, kind of in fight or flight mode, ready to stop anyone who might try to tackle it. And it's not till right at the end here that she lets herself actually enjoy the party that she's created. Like there's a worrying part where you're like, oh god, is Lucy just going to stand here and be stressed and not actually enjoy this?
Mm, yeah, yeah. But no, she seems to enjoy it, I guess.
Yeah, she I got the vibe she let herself relax there right at the end. Like the comparison that this chunk of the chapter drew to me was what we saw in Verona's head when Kenneth found happened. Like from 17.15, I think it was, when we were in Verona's head, it was like she was just really proud. Like, it was the whole vibe of like, I made this. Like I have set out to do a big thing and I did it. And I got the same vibe from Lucy here. Like this party is for her, the other side, like the combative, the non-fighting side of what she's aiming to be as a person. Like this is the thing they're fighting for, right? That's been a recurring beat for Lucy, is she wants them to not just be fighting but know what they're fighting for. And for her it's the ability for all of them to come together and have a nice time. And she puts this party together, everyone's here, everyone's having a nice time, and she finally sort of joins in on that and realizes like this is, she made this is everything they're after. At the very least it's a last hurrah, but like like this is the reason she fights, so she's got to get amongst it and actually have a good time.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and she does ish.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, that's where this chapter ends. We pick up almost immediately in the next chapter with Avery blushing over Nora's incredible performance, and again being very cute.
And again, Verona is right by her side, making it miserable
Mm,
because that's her role. I don't mean it definitely adds a lot to this, at least as a reader. Just like yeah, Verona, I don't know, stirring the pot, I guess.
yeah, um, which is very fun.
Yeah, and we get some fun insight here into how Nora has promised herself like her own mini version of like the whole yes man thing, where she's like she doesn't want to let opportunities pass her by. She wants to come out of her shell, so she's promising herself to say yes to a bunch of stuff.
Mm,
And like yeah, once again, this reminds me of the whole like that was the turning point for Avery to a degree. Like when we met Avery at the start of the story, she was not confident enough to stick up for herself, and she's kind of learnt how to do that. And this feels like Nora's equivalent of that.
mm,
Which like again, I remember being concerned back in Arc 14 when Nora and Avery were becoming an item, because I was like, there's potentially problematic vibes to Avery being in a relationship with somebody who she's trying to like help follow her own path. But I was wrong, and I'm glad to be wrong, because it's just really nice to see Nora kind of finding her own version of this path with Avery giving her a confidence boost as she goes.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so Avery takes a quick trip back to Thunder Bay to grab the gifts, passing through the Star-Crossed on the way. and it seems like Avery is able to just kind of teleport around now. I mean, it's not that simple, I guess. She has to take a quick trip through the paths, and the way back. Uh, no, so not on the one on the way back, but the one she does later this chapter is a bit more chaotic. Uh,
Yeah, a
but
little bit.
but not that much,
Yeah,
considering that
yeah,
she from here teleports from Kennet to Thunder Bay and back, and then later teleports to where is it? Fucking England or something,
yeah.
right?
Swansea.
Um,
Yeah,
and back, and does not seem to have
yeah.
internalized how fucking crazy that is.
My favorite part about this, like what makes it really funny, is that she's done this on purpose. She was like, "Oh, it's going to be too much of a pain in the ass to move these gifts in the car. It's easier if I just leave them 6 hours away and do a quick path in, path out, go grab them later." Like,
Yeah,
you're right. It's funny because Avery has no appreciation for just how fucking buck wild she's become with this boon.
yeah,
Like, it's yeah. I mean, I remember when we first went to the promenade right after Avery defined herself as the arrivals and departures person. It was like, oh yeah, the promenade fits into that sort of motif. It's like now she's got the boon from it. She's like fucking arrivals and departures indeed. She's just fucking zipping around the globe on the daily now. It's wild.
mhm.
Like Avery chapters. If we thought there was a lot of traveling and moving between groups before, it's about to get fucking bonkers.
Yeah, yeah. I love that Avery is just so I don't know, powerful. It's just
Yeah.
wild.
Well, because especially so this boon, like, because this is our first time really seeing it in action. And the thing that I didn't necessarily expect was she can seemingly will the doors off the paths to be anywhere she wants, even with very little information. All she knew about Raquel was that Raquel was in Swansea, and she turned that directly into the door into the room Raquel was sitting in. Like, that's the most bonkers part of this for me. Is like there's a little bit of a problem with getting onto the paths because you can't necessarily pick the ideal path because those doors are random. But once you're on a decent path, you it's fucking free reign.
Mm,
And just like from a metatextual perspective, fucking great call by Wildbow because that's like if he needs Avery to be able to get to Kennet from Thunder Bay in 2 seconds now, that's pretty simple. If he needs it to be a little bit harder, oh whoopsie, none of the right doors came up. She's going to be 15 minutes this time. Like it's very well crafted from a story sort of point of view where he's got the flexibility to either make it instantaneous or make it a little bit challenging.
yeah. Yeah. It's hectic. But yeah, so then, it seems to continue to be making a name for herself, has some interactions with this practitioner, maybe on the
Yeah,
Starcrossed. I've looked at the translations. It's in some kind of Indian dialect. Hindi was one translation, Punjabi was another that I saw. But
yeah.
yeah, seems kind of just like meets another chill person who is like, "Oh shit, it's
Yeah.
Avery Kelly." I mean, we kind of got that in that translation, I guess.
Yeah, I was translating it using Google Translate as I was reading. I haven't seen the community ones, but I was getting a pretty good go out of just Punjabi on Google Translate.
Mm,
And yeah, yeah, okay girl seems pretty okay. Most of her lines are just her either trying to figure out what the fuck is happening or actually trying to help Avery. Like yeah, she just seemed like another good bean. Just like Avery, I guess.
yeah.
There's even quite a few lines where they sort of echo each other. Like there's one part where Avery's like, "Oh, you guys being here might affect the timing of this path." And then like two lines later, there's this big bit of Punjabi text which when you translate it is this girl being like, "You being here might affect the timing of stuff on our end." So it's like it was just funny watching them kind of mirror each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I just I find myself once again at that point in Pale where I'm like, I don't know if this is something we're going to have time to discuss in Pale or not because is the story reaching its climax or not? I've
Mm,
given up trying to
who
tell,
knows?
but
Who could ever tell?
um, but like the idea of foreign finders is something I would love to see more of because I guess to save me rambling about this for like 20 minutes, which I probably could, like there's so much of the paths that they get from the finder who goes there. So there's like really interesting stuff to explore with how people from other cultures operate as finders and how that compares and how their experiences on each path compare. Like there's some really fun stuff to do there. And it feels like a logical next step for Avery's growth as a path runner to
Mm,
like, as she's working towards the page understanding what the Page of Suns is talking about with, like, humans not being the center of the universe, seeing completely different types of people from very different cultures feels like the next stage in that journey. So,
mm.
yeah, I wanna see more foreign finders and stuff, but, you know, at the risk of falling for the same trap I've fallen for 100 times, it does feel like maybe not a pale thing and a later on thing.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's just kind of nice to see Avery continue, and I guess the Garricks, but it's Avery
Yeah,
Kelly and the Garricks, not Avery
yeah.
Kelly and Claire Garrick or whatever. Um,
Yeah, it's a very funny moment where, like, because we've been getting told Avery is a big deal for quite a few
yeah,
chapters now, but it really comes through when this girl who can't even speak English recognizes the name written down. She's like, "Wait, you're Avery Kelly?"
yeah,
And of course, Avery's just completely oblivious to it. Like it's not like Avery's not letting it go to her head. It's just that missing Avery's head. Her ego's just like being bypassed somehow. It's hilarious.
yeah,
Yeah. So I'm just remembering that bit where she writes down who she is, and she's like, "Oh, I don't want to be like Verona and give myself all these titles." So she just gives herself like the top three. Like she's just like Avery Kelly, Guardian of Kennet, like Path Runner, blah blah blah. So you still gave yourself three titles. But yeah.
yeah,
I suppose it's something we haven't talked about. That I just remembered is it here in the notes. The path is called like the Star Crossed,
yeah.
which, like, makes it immensely funny that she met some girl she couldn't talk to on it. Like, do you think the path helps? Wait, is this a path that helps set up sort of random encounters with people who you can't quite communicate with? Because that feels so on brand for a place called Star Crossed. That just has to be a thing,
Yeah, maybe you're right. And we also heard that the perfect person for Avery
isn't it,
isn't
Kenneth?
in Kennet. Star-crossed,
Yeah,
obviously, star-crossed lovers is the continuation there. So maybe this is Avery's. Maybe Nora should I
yeah.
don't know, get jealous.
Get out of here, Nora. Yeah, no, I mean that it was just so funny to me that she enters a place called the Starcross and it's like, oh, here's some girl she can't quite seem to communicate with, but it does seem like they'd get on well. And it's like,
Hmm.
oh,
Hmm.
paths. Also, th-
um,
this path just fucking rules. Like, we haven't actually talked about like the visuals of it. You're on like the
mm,
ship flowing through a river of like space. Like it's just
yeah,
the bits of, like, hot lava burning the shit out of you because the stars are coming on board, that's not ideal, but it
yeah,
sounds beautiful.
it does sound beautiful. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so back in Kennet with the gifts, Avery and Snow chat quickly, and then Avery kind of meets up with the gang, and the fucking mayor shows up.
Yeah, to touch on the snowdrop stuff briefly, I was devastated to learn that apparently Cherry is sort of moving on from her slide.
Mm,
That is
tragic.
honestly the background plot of Pale that I was the most excited for, but it isn't really surprising to me that Cherry has had an obsession for a little bit and then just moved on because she's essentially a toddler.
Yeah, it's classic Cherry. Um, but yeah, Snow is just having a great time being back in Kennet. Clearly, just really enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, actually, the new boon that Avery has does have me wondering if Snowdrop can spend more time in Kennet again now. Like, because she does have some stuff going on in Thunder Bay too. So, I don't know, it's Snowdrop's decision, but like, it always felt a little bit weird how Snowdrop kind of had to leave Kennet because Avery was. And part of me's like, well, now that it's so easy to travel, like, isn't it feasible to start spending the weekends in Kennet or something, at the very least?
Yeah, I mean, given that it takes about 5 minutes to go between now, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Snowdrop, who has all these friends in Kennet, and Avery actually too, should get the ability to come back here a lot more often now. Aside from presumably they'll be coming back to deal with explosive fights and shit. on the reg.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
but yeah, in other news, so there's also a blink and you'll miss it line here where Luna tells us about how Toadswallow and Rook threw an early party for like all the black sheep who don't really have people at Christmas. That's just so awesome. Like Toadswallow and Rook have both come out really good in some ways.
yeah, especially Rook.
Rook was a little bit surprising to be honest. Learning that Toadswallow is going like full kind bro made sense. Rook was a bit. I was like, oh, that's nice of Rook. I didn't quite expect that from her.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, I mean, I guess to touch on Rook actually just a little bit, like as a whole person, I was recently rereading some chapters in Arc 10, and Rook was in them, and this was before we even knew that Rook was Mrs. Old Mate, and Rook was very. I'm worried that we're falling into a trap that Rook and Walbo are setting for us of kind of flanderizing Rook into being this violent idiot because like listening to Rook, it was the conversation she has with Toadswallow where she tricks him into revealing his plan for his market to Lucy. And just like kind of rereading that and seeing how like philosophical Rook was, part of me was like, I'm honestly struggling to see this as the same person who's like stupidly assisting Charles right now.
mm, mm.
Uh, uh, like the idea that Rook is getting close to Charles to stab him in the back has obviously been floated before. She's an Oni, so like we've all been ready for it. But rereading that chapter definitely had me a bit more like I've shifted a lot more towards that, and I'm at least 50-50 on Rook cuddling up to Charles and Marcy as part of a ploy to I don't know get info on them.
Yeah.
And like that would go somewhat to explaining why even after months and months, we still haven't seen Kenneth talk about Rook and the shit she's been doing with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we're wrong about Rook. Maybe Rook's chill. I don't know.
Yeah, because I just it's sort of explainable that she's doing this stuff with Charles, or again because she did sort of tell us how with Miss she was mostly there as backup and she wanted to be around when things went wrong and with things like Charles you can see her wanting to use that opportunity. But I don't know rereading 10.e a part of me was like she seems cleverer than that and at the very least her whole thing about being in a good position and like worrying about positioning. I feel like at the very least, she's intentionally playing both sides so that whoever wins, she comes out on top.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm much less inclined. After rereading 10.e, I'm far less inclined to just write Rook off as somebody who's a bit of a lost cause and going to Charles's side, and much more now I'm seeing she's somebody who they can talk to, and it could be a huge asset if she's not already intentionally being a mole. Yeah,
Yeah. We'll
I'm
have to
easily
see.
impressed is posting the Always Sunny gif. I was trying so hard not to just directly quote.
um, so anyway, uh, there's this bit where the mayor shows up and it's very fun. He's trying to turn this night market into a stable source of revenue slash tourism for the town. And Lucy's like, no, fuck tourism. This is for the diehard locals.
Yeah, but in the mayor's defense, I can see why this takes a little bit to sink in because, like, the idea of saying this giant event that everyone should come to in town is going to be done randomly is a fucking buck wild statement without context. The small town I used to live in had regular farmers markets and stuff, and the reason they're regular is because as locals, we all went and supported the local farmers and stuff but the regularity was still important because it meant we could like plan to go there. Like it would be so fucking weird if the farmers markets was just like, "Hey, heads up, Wednesday night later this week we're doing the farmers markets." Like that's a fucking wild way to approach this if you don't believe in magic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is a bit wild, but I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, I do like I really liked Lucy's idea of saying, "No, like this isn't a tourist thing." Because I've seen like things go from a local event, they do well enough, they get turned into a tourist thing and it kind of like it changes them, makes them very different fundamentally.
Mm,
And so I can see why Lucy's like, "No, we want this to be for Kenneth." And mostly I just think it's funny how she just takes zero shit from the mayor. Like the mayor comes up in here and like when she's kind of not going his way, he brings up the arcade and how oh, you're technically a person of interest in that. And Lucy's like, fucking, it's been 2 months and you haven't come talk to me. Like, fucking do it. Like, she takes zero shit from this guy. It's very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it is
And
very
yeah,
fun.
I couldn't help but think this was us getting a glimpse at what Liz is up to here. Like the mayor just sort of showing up and wanting in on the action just feels Liz to me. Like I don't know, because she's the town spirit or like this the whole idea of I'm the institution of Kennet and I want to be included. Like Liz for sure had a hand in this mayor showing up like this.
Mm, yeah. No, I agree. Now that you've said it, it makes a lot of sense. Like Liz just here to, I don't know, try and assert influence.
Yeah, because she's being left out, Ruben. They're intentionally leaving her out,
How dare they?
just like everyone always does.
Mm,
Yeah, I did. This did make me also have this a hilarious visual that I think probably happened, which is like these two chapters are largely about this party that Lucy has thrown together, and everyone is here. A big beat we get from Avery as she gets into this party proper is how everyone is here, they're all united. Everyone's dressed up so that innocence can be here. Like it's this
yeah.
huge, brilliant, unified thing. And all I could think is the whole time it's going on, Charles, Liz, and Marcy are probably each sitting there watching it with their omniscience, completely alone. Like just fucking three grumpy Grinches in their own silos watching on, being like, "Ruh, ruh, 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 ruh." And that makes the unity of everyone else even sweeter, that these 3 have fucking isolated themselves and are just watching it from afar, being pissy.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, it's it's nice. It's a nice little gift exchange party, I guess.
Yeah, and this is everything I would want from the Christmas party, like this section
Mm,
where we get up to exchanging the gifts. Like it's something you can only do in a long form story, like like Pale or like a TV show. Like just dedicating a section to just hey, characters are going to exchange gifts. Like I wouldn't care if this happened in a movie, but it's so nice seeing these characters we spent so long with give gifts for each other. Like it's so weird, but it's just so nice.
yeah, yeah. It's so nice. It's so sweet, isn't it? Let's get to the gift exchange, shall we? Because the Kennedys start giving gifts first to each other and then to the others.
Yeah. Yeah, and, they're all so good.
They are all very good. I feel like I was thinking about this. Father's Day is next weekend,
Yeah.
obviously, for everybody. Just in case you'd forgotten.
I think that's only in Australia, actually.
No, no,
I think America does it in June.
Father's Day is next weekend, so everybody make
Okay.
sure you've got a gift for your dad and you didn't forget. But yeah, like it made me think, why are these gifts so good and I am so shit at getting
So
them?
shit, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the answer is nobody in my family has done a magical ritual to define their identity clearly and vaguely for me. I feel like if somebody, because Avery gets a bunch of deer themed stuff, right? And I feel like if
Yeah,
if my dad had 5 years ago done a ritual and said, okay, my identity is I'm all about
koalas, like
macrame, Pilates, whatever, right? I'd be like, okay, great. Like, I know exactly what to get you. It's kind of almost like how, your aunts and cousins will buy you Star Wars t-shirts and you'd be like, I guess in
yeah.
their head, I have a nerd personality and therefore
Yes,
I
yeah,
like Star
yeah.
Wars, but more chosen and less
Yeah, well,
just
yeah.
kind of ambiguously applied. Anyway, so I guess maybe I'll get my family to do an awakening. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, well, like, so for Father's Day next week, I've got my dad air tags because he keeps forgetting stuff, and my mum was like, "You need air tags," and I was like,
Yeah,
"I will get him air tags," like,
yeah.
which is just yeah, like, such a shit I hate that this is the sort of gift I get people because I just, like, I don't have any other ideas, and I'm like, "Well, this is a
Mm,
thing he said he needed, it's 2 weeks away, I will buy it for you."
mm,
Um, yeah, it's funny though, like because I think you're right that part of this is definitely that all these people are kind of defined as characters with magical attributes and whatever. I am also just suspicious that Walbo is one of those people who's good at getting gifts, like you talked about your girlfriend's family being.
mm,
So
mm.
I'm currently working on a grand scheme to set up a secret Santa, trick Walbo into joining, and then rigging it so he gets me my present because it seems like he's just
Interesting.
good at it.
Yeah. That sounds very interesting. I like it.
And apologies to the poor soul who gets me as their secret Santa in the drawer. But your sacrifice will not be in vain. You'll probably get some air tags. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, so great gifts. Oh, I mean, should we just talk about like the gifts for Nibble and Chloe? I think are very good and very
Yes, yeah.
sweet, and I love that Nibble and Chloe's role in the story has been don't enter the story at all except for sweet moments like this because that means they get to live drama-free, happy lives, which is obviously exactly what they need. So as long as they're not in the story ever except for moments like this, I'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, I mean they've had some gut wrenching moments when they have been in otherwise. So yeah, I had this really funny reaction where I was reading it where like Chloe came on and Avery went to give her those two like necklace things, and Chloe was like, "Oh no, like I don't need a gift from you guys," and like I just genuinely got mad as I was reading it. It's like, no, Chloe, shut up! Like I need this for you. Like you don't get a say in this. I need you to get this nice gift. So it is unacceptable that you don't take it.
Yeah.
Like
Just
she just
let yourself be loved, Chloe.
yeah, exactly. God, there were so many other ones. I love how Avery got Lucy jewelry that matches her earring. That's such a fucking good idea.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's just a lot of great. I
Yeah.
mean, all the gifts I feel like are so high level.
Yeah, the temporary tattoo kit for Avery, perfect.
Yep. Yep.
I think one of the really fun ones too is obviously so Verona gets her little collection of glamour plants. So she's going to have some level of access to all the flavors of glamour now.
Mm,
And I think like what's also just sort of really fun about this one to talk about from the story's perspective is the original like the summer rose that Avery has, Gilme originally gave that to Verona, and it was meant to teach her moderation.
mm.
And even even the Verona of back then was like, I don't do moderation. I'll just give this to Avery. Um, and now she's got like six of them, and there's almost this weird so now she doesn't need to practice moderation so much as she needs to be able to juggle six types of moderation. Like, she can't just go all in on a certain type of glamour. She's going to need to make sure she's maintaining moderate levels of all of them. And I don't think, Arc 13, Arc 14, whatever Verona would have been up for that. But I feel like Arc 20 Verona is capable of it. I think that's really fun that Avery is essentially given as a gift for Verona a harder version of what Guillerme gave to her, but now I think she's in a position where she can actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be an interesting one to see. I think it's a great gift, as all of them are.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Nora still wants to know more about this side of Avery's life, but the universe helps come up with a convenient cover. Nora seems to think that Avery is secretly rich, which is great. Helps cover all the eccentricities and weirdnesses of these people pretty well.
It's also that's just correct. Like Avery
That's
has like
true.
a
Avery
six
is
figure
actually rich. Yeah.
like my favorite thing about this being the weird reason Nora thinks it's okay is like because so Avery's like, oh, Nora thinks I'm pulling like a crazy rich Asian style ploy where I'm keeping my real identity undercover, so she doesn't know that I'm rich and she loves me for me.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, Avery, to be fair, you probably do need to be doing that. Like, if you broke up with Nora before you get your next girlfriend, like you probably do want to think about doing something like that because like you're especially now that you're world famous with finders, people are going to be trying to trick their way into relationships with you. Like I just think it's funny because I think Nora is correct that Avery should be doing this just for the wrong reasons. Like, so yeah. Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
love this as an explanation because Avery just again, like Avery's very disconnected from how other people perceive her at the moment, and it's just like, actually, Avery, this is a pretty accurate read on how you should be acting.
Yeah, I mean, like Avery is now niche famous, right?
Yeah,
Like, effectively, this is correct from Nora.
yeah. She's got six figures plus in a bank account at age 14 and become world famous for essentially doing an invention. Like the metaphorical equivalent of discovering new technology. And yeah, so like yeah, Nora is absolutely correct, just for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, yeah. Um, But yeah, so oh yeah, Lucy's gift to the dog tags is freeing more dog tags, which is
Oh,
again wonderful.
I can't believe we saw it in Lucy's head, and Lucy was like, "God, I hope they don't get mad at me for this gift." Like, what the fuck? How could she possibly think they'd be like, "Well, you freed more dog tags, you bitch!" Like, you absolute monster. Um,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh,
it's a good one.
yeah. I was borderline in tears as I read that. That's what Avery had, so what Lucy had gotten them,
Mm,
and unlike John, she didn't even have to die to do it. So everything's coming up, Lucy.
yeah.
Um,
um,
Also, before we move on from this section, can we talk about this really weird bit where Avery is starting to appreciate how nice everything is right now? And she goes on this big rant about how the Christmas spirits are like bitch slapping her about it. And she's like, "Yeah, I think of the Christmas spirits as very slappy and they say bitch a lot." What is that
yeah.
about? What-
It is a weird one, isn't it? It's very strange. I think it's just her feeling good, being a bit overwhelmed with things being good, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just so I was like, I don't understand how you've mapped Christmas energy to slaps and saying bitch a lot. Like,
Mm,
yeah, I don't know. It just came out of nowhere for me, and I was like, I don't understand why she thinks this.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so Avery is woken up in the middle of the night with a text response from Raquel. Um, Raquel has texted back finally.
Yeah, and I do love as we go on that we get the reveal that this delay isn't because Raquel's in trouble. She's just in a different time zone. Like it just,
Yep. Raquel
yeah.
has woken up and texted Avery back immediately. She's eating breakfast. And then yeah, Avery visits and is there immediately.
It's
And
so
of
funny.
course, this is hilarious because Raquel literally said to Avery, I'm in England," and immediately Avery rocks up, which is insane.
Like Raquel has just the most reasonable response to this, and she's like, "The fuck, I didn't mean now." Like, it's so, uh, like, especially yeah, because Avery is like, "Can I drop in?" And Raquel was like, "Sure." And I was like, "Raquel, you got to be careful because Avery might mean drop in quite literally, given how the paths work."
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I had totally the wrong angle there because yeah, Raquel just didn't account for the fact that to Avery, a trip to the UK is now a 2 minute ordeal.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. Um, I love that the Sonjates are still loyal to Massa, like the fucking losers that they are.
Easton is he's a loyal man. Okay,
Mhm.
he probably talked his parents into staying on board.
Oh, it's actually so ridiculous. Um, but yes, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. I mean, Raquel's not having a good time, right?
no, I really love this moment where she's like, "I'm watching crap TV because I'm in too bad a mood to watch good TV, but watching crap TV makes me feel like crap." And I was like, "Oh fuck, I've been there." Like, I think we all have during the height of the like lockdowns and stuff. But
Mm,
yeah, that's very much like I feel you on that one, Raquel.
yeah,
Um, and there's some
yeah,
nice little foreshadowing here for obviously Raquel ends the chapter going to the house on Halfway Street. And I feel like that's almost foreshadowed here by Avery asking, like, "Are you okay with the idea that people are gonna kill your uncle?" And Raquel goes, Yeah, like I'm okay with it. Like I think I kind of love him. Like he's family. In this small way, I love him, but I'm fine with other people killing him." And I was like, "Oh, she's gonna fit right in at Verona's house." Like, you know, same energy as I think Verona has with Brett, where it's just like, look, I can't hurt him, but if somebody else was to take him out of my hands, I'm all for it.
yeah. Um,
Also, sorry, just while we're talking about how stupid Avery can be,
oh yeah, this is a classic line.
there's this part where Raquel calls her fiance a gilded dildo, and Avery's like, "Is that like a gilded lily?"
Yeah,
It's
I-
like, you fucking
it's just so
dumbass.
ridiculous. How do you process that? I don't even understand.
Avery's very smart sometimes, but I was just like, this is not those times. That is that is very stupid.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Like she's always had a blind spot for like kind of innuendo and sexual stuff. But
Yeah,
that was this is a big one.
yeah, it's
Like,
very
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, so, like, I think Avery's big dits energy, like, her BDE is just off the chain at the moment with, like, how little she's appreciating just how fucking wild her life is now, like, not just her boon, but also, like, yeah, she seemingly is not processing at all that she's now world famous, and I just yeah, this is a fun extension of that, like, she's very clever, she's very good at her job, but, like, fuck, she's got some blind spots.
Yeah. Indeed. But yeah, so Avery helps Raquel get out of her oath by getting her forsworn.
Yeah, and, there's a really interesting lead up to this, like, before we get to
Mm,
the trip to Ali and Charles.
mm,
Raquel does really fight back against this at first, with what I think is a pretty reasonable argument of her saying, "My entire life has been people dangling hope in front of me, even including you beating my uncle and me realizing that's not going to change the system. I'm still beholden to this bullshit family." Like, she's in a very reasonable position to sort of be sitting here and be like, "I'm done. I don't want hope. I don't like. I just can't do hope anymore. My whole life has been people abusing that, and I just leave me to be miserable." Like, and of course, like, the fucking good thing she's standing across from Avery right now because Avery's like, "No, fuck that shit," and, like, does everything she can to make her come out here, and it works. And it's like, yet again, Avery not letting someone fall into the trap she did of being too passive. Avery's gonna come out here and convince you to forswear yourself, but for a good reason.
yeah. Yeah. What an interesting turn this is for the story, huh? It's important to note, I guess, that Avery was trying to get the Alabaster to help, not Charles, but then Charles stepped in.
Which,
And
like, sorry, again, should have seen coming.
oh, of
Like, the
course.
Alabaster
But
was like, "No," and I was like, "That's fine, Charles is gonna come do it anyway," like.
yeah, but I think it's important to note, like, Avery's plan wasn't to go to Charles.
Yes,
Anyway,
she tried to go around him.
yes. And like Charles pays lip service to the idea that this is, quid pro quo in the sense that Avery has revealed a trick and he kind of talks about how this is a bit of a thing against Mussa, but
Yeah,
like it's pretty clear that Charles is just kind of doing Avery a massive solid here, right?
yeah,
Or
or
or not even doing
Raquel.
her a solid, but like being very consistent with his
Yeah,
forswearing is bad. I'm gonna fix that, and like it's legit.
yeah, this is I'm 100% on the same page. It doesn't matter that she's a musser, it doesn't matter that this is Avery's quid pro quo. Like, this is Charles's whole thing, and, like, honestly, the Alabaster spells that out to the point where I actually
Yeah,
think the Alabaster said no because she knew Charles would pay for it anyway, like.
yeah,
We know how selfish and, worried about her position the Alabaster is, and her way
yeah,
of saying no is like, "No, your word is, you're old enough to awaken, so you're old enough for your word to matter." And,
yeah,
like, you could just
yeah,
hear Charles's ears burning as she said that,
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
and it's yeah, Charles comes in and yeah, you're right. It's not about any of these games that are going on. This is like and Charles says it. He's like, no, this is bullshit. A child should not be forced into a marriage because of an oath she was made to swear under duress at age 14. Fuck that
mm,
shit. Like,
mm,
and this is the thing we unambiguously agree with Charles on. Like, this is one of those moments where Charles is on the same page as us. And it's like, fuck, he's so good when he's on the right side. He just is like, forswear yourself, ask me to unforswear it. Done. That was fucking bullshit. Enjoy, like, not being beholden to that dumb shit anymore. It's like, just when, yeah, Charles is so much fun when he's not being a fat, sloppy cock.
yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it, isn't it? Yeah, Charles
Yeah.
is can be pretty cool sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, and I think honestly, like, that was almost a little bit of a vibe in both of the chapters this week. It's like, Edith in the last chapter and Charles here at the end of this chapter do both make a little bit of a case for reminding us that, like, we don't hate everything about Charles, right? Like, or the culprits in general. Like, and we've talked about this to death on the podcast, but there's a lot that Kennett and the culprits agree on. There's just a few pretty
Mhm.
core differences that have put them on opposite sides. But I
Yeah.
think it's really interesting that as we seemingly head towards the confrontation against the culprits are about to become enemies that we're actively fighting for the first time. It's really interesting that both the chapters in this story really take the time to make it clearer to us where the culprits are coming from and how there is a lot of alignment between them and Kenneth. Like it feels like we're heading into fighting, or potentially heading into fighting them as armed with the knowledge that there's a lot we agree on as we can be. And I think that's really fun for kind of setting the stakes of that confrontation.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
like yeah, I just really reminding us what they actually, yeah, because these are two sides that in many ways shouldn't be fighting. Um,
yeah. Um, yeah. I don't know. I guess, but they have to because Charles
oh yeah, I mean,
still is doing fucked up shit.
this is the thing. Charles consistently refuses to negotiate, and like that's the thing for me is like if there could maybe on both sides be more of an effort to try and negotiate and meet in the middle, or try and work together. But Charles is always very clear that he's not really going to change how he's doing stuff and not really work with them. So it's like I'm not
Mm.
really expecting this to turn into them making peace rather than fighting, because I don't think Charles will let that happen. But yeah, I think the most interesting thing about the culprits as villains is how almost aligned they are to our goodies. And so it's really fun to be really exploring the differences and the similarities there as we head into fighting them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, like since we're in an Avery chapter, it reminds me of when Hazel got onto the second leg of the Forest Ribbon Trail, and there was that whole thing about how you will come to sympathize with your wolf, to the point where you actually kind of want it to eat you. I feel like it's really fun that we're seeing so much of Charles and Co. that it's getting easier to fully understand what they're after and where they're coming from.
Yeah, I, I I see us with this and the stuff with the negatives. Like we're developing the actual moral argument of Charles is a bit more
Yes.
actively here as we're about to come face to face with it, and it seems to. I don't know. I mean, it definitely is holding up in some ways.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and yeah, this is what's so fun is like, yeah, the culprits are just not that far from Kenneth. Like, I can't think of any other bad guys in any works that I've read which are like so fun in this way, because Charles is
Mm,
80% on the same side as the Kenneteers. Like Magneto and Professor X from the X-Men movies are like as close as I can think to a bad guy who's like got this kind of almost begrudging respect and an alignment with the heroes, but they just disagree on one fundamental part of it.
mm,
And
yeah,
it's just such a fun relationship for a bad guy to have with the goodies.
yeah, yeah. Um,
So,
but yeah,
also speaking about, I just want to talk about Avery's like massive tactical advantage that she gave up
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Mostly just because, again, just to rag on Avery for a bit. I think it's so funny that, like, it just didn't even really occur to her what she was doing. She just came to the Alabaster's domain. The Alabaster's like, "Wait, you can get in here without the 24-hour rule?" And Avery's like, "Yeah, I guess so." And then Charles pops in. And he's like, "Huh, you've given up a big tactical advantage, so I will like quid pro quo you, blah blah." And like, we're in Avery's head. She wasn't thinking about that at all. Like, Charles has fallen for the classic trap of assuming that Avery thinks more than 2 minutes ahead. Um, or yeah, more than one step ahead. Avery was thinking, I need to get Raquel to the Alabaster. She got to the Alabaster, and Charles is like, oh, she's tipping her hand. She's really giving me a lot here.
Yeah.
Didn't cross her mind fucking at all.
No, of course
Like,
not. Oh, I can use this strategically? Oh, of course.
yeah, people are always attributing stuff Avery does to tactical decisions. She just doesn't think like that at all. Like, she's so small brained in that department. And it's just so funny watching everyone assume she's maneuvering and making sacrifices. And she's just walking where she wants to go.
Yeah.
Um, that said, like, I do still think this will matter, because it's sort of like, yes, Avery has lost the ability to just drop into Charles's domain without him realizing she can do that and like drop the wolf on him or some funny shit.
Mm,
But it's like, even now that him and Marissa and stuff know that she can do this, what it does mean is like they need to guard their shit. So it's like she's given up the ability to just surprise and nuke them. But they are still going to be a little bit more hamstrung than they otherwise would be, because now they kind of need to constantly protect their secret bases. Like, they can't rely on Avery not just being able to drop in whenever. So
mm.
those are resources they now have to spend defending places they otherwise wouldn't have had to. So that's
Yeah.
that's something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is a fucking blood goddess and a Carmine. Like, we'll take whatever little advantage we can for spreading their resources as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but yeah, so Avery gets home and trouble is brewing. Sheridan set up a secret camera and caught Avery, and yeah. Seems like Sheridan's about to be indoctrinated.
This is very fun. Yeah. I do want to call out that Avery sees that her family is like stressing and up in the middle of the night. She just immediately asks her mum, "Is Grumble dead?"
Mm.
Which I'm pretty sure she made the same guess when her parents sat her down for the serious talk about um the fact that they were separating. Like Avery was like, "Oh, is Grumble dying?" Like
Yeah,
Avery,
she's
calm
ready
down on
for it.
assuming Grumble's dead.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah, pretty funny.
Um, but yeah, sorry, back to the main
But
business.
yeah, practitioner Sheridan confirmed.
Well, Awaredan at least.
No, practitioner Sheridan has been confirmed, which will be
Do you
fun.
think Sheridan can give up sarcasm? No, I'm not discussing whether she
Forsworn
would.
Sheridan just going to join Team
Yeah,
Charles.
yeah, fuck it. Yeah, Charles will be seeing her on the daily. Like, she'll just have to fucking stand beside him all the time. Yeah. Uh, I don't know. Like, yeah, I'm not talking about whether she would give up sarcasm. I'm wondering whether she physically can. Because just looking at my own 16-year-old self, who I think reflects Sheridan in a lot of ways, I would have been forsworn in 2 minutes. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really fun they're bringing Rowan in for this too. I see a lot of the logic behind awarening Rowan in the same way it worked for Connor.
Mm,
Like the only other thing we hear from Rowan in this chapter is the awkward thing Lucy overhears where Rowan's a bit surprised that Avery is out publicly.
mm,
And I just Rowan very much feels like Connor's son to me in that way, where he's like the guy who just hasn't really, he's the straight cis white guy who hasn't been challenged in any way, shape, or form. So it's like I think getting perspective, like I see being made aware as being like introduced to the like minorities and stuff a bit more, and not just being
mm,
innocent like a sheep in society or whatever. So it's a bit like,
mm.
yeah, it's like I feel like Rowan will grow into a better person by being made aware. Like the words literally right there, right? Like it's not really even a metaphor. It's just he will be more aware of the things around him. Like honestly, I wish they'd go and get Declan and get him in on this too. I think Kerry's the only member of the family who doesn't need to be included at this stage.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. I guess we will see what how Sheridan I guess grows with this.
Yeah, Sheridan's more interesting because she's seemingly someone who's closer to being aware, anyways, and like somebody who like isn't doing so hot in society anyway, right? Like she's found podcasting, and that's really the first thing she's latched onto as something in her life that she likes.
Mm,
So yeah, whereas yeah, like Rowan, I feel like it's just going to be exactly what we saw with Connor, which is somebody who is good but is just oblivious, and this will help him become a better person.
yeah.
Sheridan's gonna have a bit more of a, like, interesting interaction with awareness, I think.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I think so too. I can't
And
wait to
then,
see exactly how it plays out.
yeah, and Declan, I think he needs to be made aware because his big issue at the moment is that he's got his head so far up his own arse and he's in gamer culture. Genuinely, make him live with the goblins for a couple of days. I think they'll sort him out. It'll be fine.
Yeah, a very fun hook for the next chapter. I'm really looking forward to seeing Awaredan.
Yeah, and from a metatextual perspective, how I was already talking about how, like, from Wildbow's perspective, this boon from the promenade is kind of great because it's like now Avery can just come to Kennet on a dime if he needs her to
Mm,
be here. Whereas, like, since Arc 14, this story has kind of had to go out of its way to make Avery able to come to stuff in Kennet.
mm,
That's made even easier by the fact if Rowan and Sheridan are aware, Avery doesn't have to hide who she is at home at all anymore. So that's both interesting from an in-world character perspective of Avery being able to, be out at home, magically speaking, but also makes it a lot easier for Wildbow that she can like Avery can now just zip in and out of Thunder Bay and not have to worry about upsetting Rowan or Sheridan because if they're aware, it won't matter.
mm, yeah, yeah. It's clever. You're right.
But yeah,
Um, but yeah, so that's the end of our chapters for this week. Let's get into some predictions, shall we? Some predictions that our community has left in our Power Predictor form, which you can find linked in the show notes down below. I'm going to start with mine because it's a very quick one that we I think talked about a bit in our last episode as well. But um,
yeah.
Yeon angling to replace the Sable. I'm This was predicted by Dr. Bob first, and then later by Mark Confident. Very confident that this will happen. But yeah, I do kind of see this happening. Like Yiyun, like the Sable. This story is called Pale, Sable, the judges. Like it's a
Yeah.
conflation of a few threads that I think makes sense.
Yeah, which I think we did touch on last week. Yeah. I think what's interesting, yeah. So I think both of these predictions were also really honing in on the fact that she's building herself a big black chair of death.
Mm,
And so the idea that that would be her sable throne, came up in at least one of these predictions. I think that's interesting because like the sable is the judge we know the least about, but I'm inclined to go with a read that's similar to what Megafire went over in their essay not that long ago, which is like I see the Sable as he was a high spirit, like he's very institutional, kind of from the ground up as a big spirit, and we've
mm,
seen how inflexible the Sable kind of is. And so, what's fun about Yi Yun as a potential replacement is she's the opposite. Her whole life philosophy is to take dichotomies and tear them apart and find the third one. So as a Sable, it does seem like she would be kind of fundamentally the opposite of our current Sable.
mm.
And so that's a huge part of why I'd love to see this prediction come true, is because I think seeing the very different way Yiyun would propose tackling the role is incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'll be fun.
I think she'd be a better Sable. It's, I don't particularly like our current one. Although, yeah, he's the one we know the least about. The Sable's 100% the judge who it's like, if my read on them is just fully off, I'd be the least surprised.
Yeah. Um,
For my own
yeah, let's
prediction,
let's see your prediction.
yeah. So Lapsed Classicist has basically come in with a prediction that Kira Lynn is sort of going to continue to be the negateer who's a little skeptical of Charles's stuff. Like she's the one who seemed to have her head the most well screwed on so far. Um, and basically, Lapsed Classicist predicted that as she keeps being sort of a pain in Charles's side, they will forcibly unawaken her. Like she will get reset.
Mm,
And then Lapse Classicist predicts that this will make Nomi and some of the others start to have serious doubts of their own. And
mm,
I really like this prediction because I think what would be really fun is, yeah, if Kirillin is kind of the good bean who gets unawakened forcibly, I see this radicalizing some negatives while casting doubts for others. Like if Nomi and others start to get like a little bit like, oh, this isn't all it's cracked up to be. There'll also presumably be a couple who fucking double down on the bullshit. And they're like, I need to make sure I'm towing the party line or I'll get evicted. So I could see like as the Kenneteers start weakening the Negateers, something like this happening to cast doubts for a few but radicalize the others would be really fun.
yeah, it's interesting. I don't. This would be pretty big. I don't know. Wouldn't this be a betrayal of Charles's whole philosophy if he forcibly unawakens somebody?
No, they've explicitly said that's what the teachers can do.
Yes, I suppose the teachers can do that, but I would be surprised if the teachers, if Kirilin's teacher doing that because this person is expressing some anti-Charles sentiment is not. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess I could see Charles doing it, and it would be a pretty big, wild thing to do.
Yeah, well, it's the sort of thing where I think the phrasing in the awakening ritual was the teachers can pull the plug on you if they don't think this is right for you.
Yes.
If Kira Lynn refuses to cross a line because she doesn't want to hurt Kenneth or whatever,
Mm,
one of these forsworn dickheads. I mean, she's got the creepy teacher, right? Like her creepy teacher's
mm,
ability to be
mm.
able to say she doesn't have the stomach for this. Like
Yeah.
it would be the framing that they could kind of go with.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you're right. We can see it. Yeah. All right. Cool. Good predictions, folks.
um, should we get
Just
into our discussion question then?
yes. Time for our discussion question. Our discussion question for the past fortnight has been: list some Christmas gifts you would get for pale characters, and we'll try and guess who they're for. So everyone's been pretty good with putting their gifts together and spoiling them, so we can kind of play live. I think it'll be fun. Should
Yeah.
we get into it, Elliot?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and we haven't really pulled these. I'm just like reading them off straight off Reddit to keep the mystery alive. So I guess to start with the first person on the first week here, which is Captain Rhino. His present ideas. So the first one is a rock with a rude shape.
Got to
That's
be
got to
for
be for Cherry pop, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. Obsessed with rocks, rude shapes.
Okay, no,
Uh,
this is a great answer.
oh, this is a good answer.
The answer is actually any goblin except cherry pop because they'll enjoy the rude shape and they'll also get a kick out of cherry pop not having it. I like
That's
that.
so
I like that a
harsh
lot.
and so good. Oh wow.
The contents of the food waste bin in my kitchen.
I wouldn't really call that a present, but I guess snow, right?
Yeah, I mean, she can get a lot of those though, right? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can. I mean, yeah, it's got to be Snowdrop, right? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
the answer is it's Snowdrop, but she turned up unexpectedly and I didn't have time. So this is the like grabbed a t-shirt at the airport style gift for Snowdrop, which that tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this next one's interesting because the next one is a holiday.
Every character
Yeah,
in this
everyone.
story.
I guess if I need to pick one, Alpy.
Alpie's good. Lucy could use a holiday, I'm sure.
Oh, Lucy wouldn't take a holiday. Like,
Lucy wouldn't take the holiday, but could use
what?
one.
No,
A forced holiday.
You'd send Lucy on a vacation. She'd spend a week sitting on the beach stressing about what was going on back home. I feel. Um,
Okay, so you think Alpie?
yeah,
I could say Matthew and Louise.
yeah, yeah. A nice couple's day at the spa or something. Uh, okay, yeah. The answer is pretty much
Uh,
any resident of Kennet. Not that they'd accept it because they've got too much to do. So yeah, okay.
Yep. Nora's dad's homebrewing kit. Who's that going to be regifted to?
I mean, it's got to be Biscuit, right?
Oh, that's good.
I don't know if
Yeah,
she needs it, but like
that's good.
any alcoholic source is a goal for Biscuit. I think.
Yep. Oh, yep. Nice biscuit. Correct.
Yeah,
And a T-shirt that says "Keep calm, my daughter is a superhero," which has got to be for Connor, right?
that's 100% Connor. Yeah.
100% Connor. Yep, Connor. All right, cool. Next up, we've got Gamanda Eren Priest.
Wow, I'm glad you got stuck with the job of pronouncing that one.
The first one is a shirt which says, "Oh dear, I'm queer." Okay, so
Who
I
could this
guess this is
possibly be
for
for?
yeah. Who could it possibly be? I mean, it's obviously for Avery, right?
Yeah, it's got a picture of a deer on it. To be clear, "Oh dear, I'm queer" is spelt wait with two e's, dear.
Yes, yes, yes. A mug shaped like a witch's cauldron, and then also potentially a ceramic cat mug, which I think maybe gives it away.
That does help me narrow it down. I think I honestly would have got there just from a mug shaped like a witch's cauldron.
Yeah, no, I
That
think
has
so
Verona
too.
written all over it
Yeah.
anyway. Um,
And then is this still part of the same one? No, okay. Well, they might have messed up this last one because it is for Lucy, but it's all just completely in a spoiler tag. So I don't think we would have been able to guess that one.
what I think they went through the 3 Kenneteers for their gifts is probably the logic behind spoiling that whole last one.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that mug actually reminds me of one of our all packed up 2 props that we've got. I don't know if you'll remember that one because it's been sitting here, but
Uh,
because like everyone will see it on the day, but we have drinking apparatuses that reflect
yes.
each of the Kenneteers. Do you
Oh,
remember the
yes,
Verona
yes.
one? Yeah.
No. Kind of,
Okay.
maybe? No, not really.
Well, that's cool. We'll leave it as a surprise for if all packed up 2 happens.
If the story ends.
Yeah, exactly. We're
Um,
doing it. It's a matter of pale ending.
then we've got misconceptions annoy. So a Sailor Moon outfit, a hose with an implication it should be an implement, and a documentary about the gay rights movement. So who would you assign those to?
The Sailor Moon outfit feels like I'm just thinking of Liberty's goblin
Yeah,
transformations.
yeah, or the
But
similar ones on the promenade.
yeah. Yeah, oh well, yeah, maybe it's just for Avery then. I was gonna say like Fernanda or something.
Jude.
As like the fairy version of Liberty, but yeah, maybe it's just a transformation suit for Avery.
Mm.
The hose with an implication of it being an implement, I genuinely have no idea.
Well, the documentary about the gay rights movement, I mean, surely it's going to be for Avery. Who would that? Maybe
No,
Nora?
she
Maybe
doesn't
that's
need
for
that.
Nora.
I don't know. I assumed that was for like yeah, like people saying
For like
Declan in the
Connor.
chat. Like
Oh,
yeah,
for Declan. I mean, Declan wouldn't watch it, is the problem.
yeah. Um, like Connor, I would have given that to Connor, a couple of arcs ago.
Mm.
Uh, not so much anymore. Trying to think
Oh,
who's been stupid and boomer homophobic recently, but
yeah.
maybe that whichever Garrick she was with on the train.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. With maybe Clay. Cliff,
Yeah,
sorry.
Cliff or Clay.
Cliff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whichever one it was.
What the hose though? The hose.
The hose have yeah. Honestly, back to Declan because Declan's a little penis and hose is a penis shaped. I don't know. I've got nothing.
Sure. All right. Answers are the Sailor Moon outfit for Avery. Yep. The documentary was for Cliff. Nice. And the hose was for Adoria.
Oh, oh, because she did use the big hose on the promenade, didn't she? She was like, wasn't she
Yeah.
the one who
Oh, she was
blasted
the fight. Yeah,
blasted at
yeah,
the
yeah.
wolf with her
Yep, yep,
hose?
yep, yep.
Okay, yep.
Cool. All right.
Okay,
Who's up
we're
next?
up to the next one. I think the next one is Smunchlets.
Oh, yes. Smunchlets.
So they have a gift which is the narrative escape rope, which is if you feel you're getting wrapped up in a plot that puts you in danger or sets expectations for you, pull on the rope to go home and just get out of there and out
Hmm.
of any plotting party's mind. You will deal with the consequences on another day. And I'm seeing a lot of whys, which obviously, this is again something that will come up in All Packed Up too. Is we're going to have to update our practitioner tier list because I'm afraid why is no longer in the escape to the story tier. Um, he got an interlude and it got dragged in. Um, yeah, Florin, I suppose. I think the other candidate for the escape to the story tier is got to be Jessica.
Oh,
Jessica
yeah.
just
That's true.
found her cousin and she just fucking yeeted her way out of the story.
Yeah.
She was in one hypothetical and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, to be honest, this seems like the perfect anti-Fey device. So really,
Yeah,
anybody that has to deal with
yeah,
Marcy.
yeah. I want a narrative escape rope because I'm also like, they're talking about getting out of fairy plots and stuff. As I was reading that out, I also just felt like if you're at a party and you don't want to be there anymore, you can just go home and
Mm.
nobody will be like, "Why did you leave the party early?" Fucking awesome.
Okay, so let's mull that one over while we also think about the Aimless Drone, which is a flying small drone with a seemingly endless battery. It flies from town to town, bringing around its remote control, targeting innocents by giving them a kind of lucky toy that they stumble into, children. It has developed a sense of self. It thrives off of the enthusiasm of youngsters who stumble across it. And then, as soon as they get bored with it, it flies off to its next target. So, which child would love to find this toy?
Fuck, I have no idea.
Mm. We
So
get
wait,
Rain Torrential saying Kerry in chat, which I think makes sense.
so the present is the aimless drone, right? So the present is this thing that goes from town to town and
Yeah,
gives other people
it's
little
an
toys.
inherently temporary present, isn't it?
Like, yeah, who would get benefit out of controlling something like that? Like, I mean, Charles has been compared to Santa Claus. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who this is for.
Yeah. And then we also have a non magical golden star sticker that says, "You tried," off center. I would say that's for Brett, but he didn't try. So
Yeah,
thanks
no,
for
what are you
that.
talking about? He did he did the opposite. Well, Connor.
All right,
No,
let's see. Let's see.
Connor's
The
moved on.
narrative escape rope is for. Oh, it's for Y. There you go.
Damn
Well
it! I
played.
took myself out of the right answer.
The aimless drone for Montague. Interesting. I
Oh,
I do quite like that as an answer.
yeah. I just,
Montague.
not gonna lie, I plumb forgot Montague existed. It's been a while since we saw him.
Yeah. And the "You tried" sticker was for Easton. Ah, yes.
Okay, yes, that's good.
That's fair.
That's very good.
Uh,
Yeah. Easton is honestly, for anyone who's listened to Deep Impact, there was one character who we loved to dunk on. And I really do enjoy how Easton is giving that character a run for their money in terms of just being a stupid piece of shit.
yeah. So the final answer from Manukos. A bunch of items here. I'm going to go through them all and we can see what we think.
Okay.
Yellow tinted glasses that allow you to see odors, a Chekhov's gun, a gun with 3 shots that will make anything it hits plot relevant, a locator
Or
pin.
wait, should we do guesses for each one? Wait, we're not going to remember them if we list them
Yeah,
out
all
like
right, all
this.
right, all right.
I won't
So
do.
yellow tinted glasses that let you see odors. What do you think?
I mean, my first thought is Goblin.
Yeah, me too.
But I don't know how or why that services any of them.
Why do they want to see odors?
I mean, they're goblins; they just think it's funny.
I
But
guess that's fair.
I'm trying to think of a specific goblin, like we heard a lot about Dee Dee, and her whole thing of
Mm,
like listening for silence and all that. Like, it
mm,
feels like she was doing a lot of sense based. goblin
Does
craft.
anyone have a really bad sense of smell that gets them down in the story?
Yeah, I mean, I could use it. My sense of smell is
I also have
atrocious.
a terrible sense of smell, so I guess these are for us.
Yeah, are we
Let's
the
see.
answer?
uh, we were not okay. It was just four goblins in general.
Yeah, okay.
The Chekhov's gun, a gun with three shots that will make anything it hits plot relevant.
Oh god, that sounds useful for anyone. I'm trying to think.
Mm.
I would almost say so. It doesn't kill them, right? If you hit them with it, it makes them plot
Yeah,
relevant.
I guess. Yeah,
I would almost say Lucy, just because Lucy feels like the sort of person where it's like, hey, shoot them with this gun, and
yeah,
then they can't weasel out of shit, and
yeah.
they
You'll
have to
get
stay here and
entangled
handle it.
in this situation more actively. Yeah, I
Yeah,
really like that.
because like, yeah, Lucy fucking hates it when people try to not deal with their shit. So,
Yeah, yeah. Unlucky. This one was Verona, unfortunately.
oh well, that's same thing.
Same thing, same character. Verona will just regift it as she did with the Summer Flower. Um, okay, the locator pin, a red push pin that when stabbed on a piece of paper with a person's name on it, they will be alerted of the pin's current location until removed. Sorry, let me read that again. When you stab it onto a piece of paper, the person whose name is on that paper will be alerted of the pin's location on the piece of paper. I don't really understand the benefit of this power.
Well, I mean, okay, if you were friends with Avery, you just had the red pushpin thing. It's like an emergency, like Avery, come and save me, thing. Like I'm
Oh
thinking
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah. I get you. I get you.
it's an ability to send out a very targeted SOS to
Yeah,
someone.
come help me. I'm here.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I get you. So who would use that?
I was gonna say Snowdrop, but Snowdrop doesn't need it. The familiar bond does that
No, I
already.
feel
So
like this would be good
Nora,
for like one of the parents as like an emergency
yeah,
SOS phone, like Jasmine or Connor or
yeah,
Desmond.
yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah, I'll go with Jasmine. I like Jasmine.
The answer, Rook. Rook for informing people where she's set up and playing with positioning. I can also see it going to around
Ah.
jam as push pins are basically small nails. I see.
I see. So I think Manukos is thinking of it as more of a general's tool. Wait, we were thinking of it as SOS.
Ah,
I think they
okay.
want Rook to have a bunch of papers with a bunch of names and the red push pin so they can signal people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I can see that. Okay, the flaming bike, a toddler or kid-sized bicycle that leaves a flaming trail behind it without any particular addition to speed. So,
Cherry
uh,
Pop smoking cig. That's who this is for.
yeah. I mean, maybe. What's the fucking the boogeyman in the wheelchair? What's he called?
Oh god.
Killwagon. I feel
Killwagon,
like
yeah,
this
yeah.
would be a good thing for Killwagon in case he gets like a sidekick, This would be like
Yeah, no.
Killwagon's sidekick's car.
No, when Killwagon and the milkmaid hook up, because we all know it's coming, and they
Yep,
have
yep,
a
yep.
little baby boogeyman.
The OTP. Yeah. Um, all right, we've got yeah, cherry pop or snowdrop. Yeah, that tracks. Killwagon's sidekick main bike. Very good, Mirth Strike. Well done. All right, we've got the stealthoscope. By placing it against a surface, you can listen to anything around you, but everyone listens to any sound you make more easily. Okay, so it's like a two-way.
Two-way Lucy's implement.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Well, I don't think Lucy needs this because this is, as you say, kind of similar to Lucy's implement. Who else would love a spying kind of thing like this? I feel like practitioner Sheridan would enjoy this.
Yeah, that's
Oh
fun.
yeah, Mirth Strike agrees. Sheridan.
I'm leaning more into the stethoscope aesthetically in my attempts to guess. Like, who would wear a stethoscope?
Interesting.
And also, who can be quiet? Because the whole like the flip side of this is everyone listens to any sound
Yes,
you
you have
make.
to be able to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, like because yeah, like I would have said one of the goblins, except they're loud as
Mm,
fuck. I
yeah,
could see Toad Swallow rocking this.
yeah, yeah. Jasmine makes sense. Tommy B says as a nurse, and
Oh
also
yeah,
it's kind of thematically connected to Lucy's implement.
that's better.
Um,
I'm changing sides, Jasmine.
oh yeah, the answer was Lucy, but as a way to like kind of boost what implement does. But I do like the Jasmine answer. I think that works really well.
Yeah,
All right, ring of swapping. You can swap positions with someone. The ring is goes into their hand slash possession, I suppose.
yeah, that's a fun sort of power. I mean, fuck, this is another one of those ones where I'm like, man, I could see how pretty much anyone would use that. Like,
Yeah.
I think you need to be like it needs to be someone like Avery on one end at least, right? Like somebody who can quickly react to just
Mm,
being dumped somewhere completely different. Like,
yeah.
yeah, like I don't know that all of the people in Kennet would do fine just like suddenly swapping positions.
Yeah, no, you'd need to be. It does feel like a pretty losty item, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And Avery with her like wind shoes definitely could react to this pretty well. I feel like Lucy would probably be able to use this trick pretty well as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Who do you think?
I'm just gonna go with Avery. Like it just I know it's a lot like I know Manukos has said this is a lost item, so it's like but it
Mm.
just feels like Avery sticks the ring on someone, goes somewhere horrible and switches positions with them and it's funny.
No, I think yeah, no, okay, maybe you're right. I'm not exactly sure how the ring works, but yeah, yeah, I think this tracks. The answer is Luna. Luna, so you could
Oh,
make them. Oh yeah, you make the most of the concept of the ring. Shared magic. Yeah, okay, okay. It's a cool kind of Kenneth found. I guess you're right. Like it's got this lost vibes. It feels like kind of Kenneth found. What about that guy who balances on the barrel? He could use it. Oh, is he in the
yeah.
barrel? I can't remember now.
But no, but that's Luna's whole thing is she can kind of balance a bunch of stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, okay, yeah,
I,
yeah. That definitely tracks then. That definitely
I
tracks for
think I think
Luna.
there's the logic there of
Yeah,
like similar to what we were thinking with Avery, she's someone who can adapt to getting dumped somewhere pretty quickly. Luna
yeah, yeah,
follows the
yeah,
same logic, so yeah.
yeah. I like that. Um, all right, two more. We've got that one ring. Wearing this ring makes you invisible and blind. Okay, good ref.
I mean, Lucy wouldn't mind. Like, I mean,
Mm,
Lucy's already leaning heavily into the Lady Justice
yeah,
aesthetic, so
yeah.
her
It's
being blind
very true.
is
That would
just
be
the
very good for
last
Lucy.
the last step of her Lady Justice vibes.
Um, I think Stu Mullen would probably appreciate this one. I just kind of feel like he would have fun vibes with this.
Yeah, or Tashlet.
Oh yeah, that's a good call.
The blindness, not so much, but the invisibility. I mean, I'm just
Mm,
Tashlet was kind of the poster child in arc 14 and 15 for how innocence keeps some others down. So, like her ability
yeah,
to just be invisible and wander,
yeah,
it feels
yeah.
like it would be a perk.
I feel like Lucy can already kind of do this. She's done effectively this with like some of her glamour transformations, right? Like
Yeah,
when she was shadowing the negatives. But yeah, I feel like Lucy's a good call for this. Oh, for the ghouls so they can go outside. Would this let them go outside? I guess it would. If they're invisible, they can't be hit by sunlight. That's probably the definition of invisibility.
I mean, yeah, I suppose it depends what the spirits vote, right?
How
Like,
they, yeah, it would be a
yeah,
risky one, I reckon.
yeah,
Yeah.
I see the logic there, though. Yeah,
Yeah. And then finally, deep pockets. Place it on the inside of your pocket and vastly expand its carrying capacity. I mean, this has got to be for Verona. Verona's the most like
yeah,
pulling tricks
the
out of the
trinket.
bag one. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Toad Swallow's a good one as well. I like
Oh,
that.
yeah, he's another trinketeer. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Toad Swallow for all the trinkets he has. Boom. Well played.
Hey,
I'm easily impressed.
nailed it.
Bada bing, bada boom. All right, folks. Well, that's thank you for leaving all your gift ideas. It's quite a fun game to play guess the
Yeah,
gift idea.
that was fun.
Of course, we will be running a new discussion question for the next fortnight. That discussion question is which member of Avery's family, excluding Avery, will be the best practitioner when they all become invariably awakened?
Yeah, I
So
like that one.
leave your answers in our discussion thread, linked in the show notes down below. And yeah, whoever ends up being correct will win a point.
And that's the spirit of discussion questions.
Exactly right. Yeah, you can leave your answers that in the discussion thread, which will be linked in the show notes down below. And also, while you're checking out those show notes, there's a link there to our Twitter where we post a new hilarious Pale meme each and every day. So check that out at Pale Reflectcast for your daily Pale memes.
Yep. Don't forget to stop by our website too, doofmedia.com. It's where you can find out all the details on all the other shows that are going on at Doof. I think it's nearing the end of Kingslingers season 2, so there's
Mm,
like that's where you're going to find info on season 3 when it's coming out. And obviously, yeah, all the other stuff that's happening. There's a calendar page there which tells you when shit is happening too.
yeah, yeah. If you want to support the Duff Media Network, you can do so by becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/Duff Media and you can get all kinds of great perks, bonus shows, bonus things, all kinds of good stuff. It's all broken down on the Patreon, so check it out at patreon.com/Duff Media.
Yes, and don't forget to stop by Wildbow's Patreon while you're there, patreon.com/Wildbow. He wrote this story, and he continues to write this story because of the patrons.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he's threatened that if people don't donate enough money to him, he's going to do a Edith and Matthew get back together arc. So make sure you stop by his Patreon
Yeah.
and prevent that from happening. Thank you for joining us, folks, and we'll
Yeah.
see you next time for
I
another
bet you
Negateer interlude. I'm
I was
calling
about
it.
to say, surely we're gonna get a Negateer interlude in the
Hell
next
yeah!
2.
Who's it going to be? I think it's who's the abyssal screamer? What's his name? Is it
Josh.
Joshua? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's the one I'm angling for.
I want Cameron, the new girl. I think the new
Oh
girl would be a
yeah,
fun
yeah.
fun way to
That
introduce
tracks.
some of the
That
other.
tracks.
'Cause there's 2 or 3. I need to actually go and just start using Snowdrop's Tiny Fans doc because I'm
Tracking
sure it's a
doc.
lot better
Yeah.
than mine.
Yeah.
Well, I've still got my notes up here on one of my monitors, and I'm seeing there's like 3 here who basically have no notes next to their name.
Mm,
So it feels like a fun way to kind of get more info on those 3.
yeah. Cool. All right, folks. Well, yeah, we'll see you next time for that. Bye.
See ya.